All right, the mainstream media calling the president's budget proposal heartless for cutting grants to Meals on Wheels. But once again, I'll tell you, the media's got it all wrong. According to the IRS filing for Meals on Wheels, only about 3% of its funding comes from the government. Joining me right now are radio host Howie Carr and Chris Hahn. Carr is also the author of the new book, Kennedy Babylon. Howie, good to have you here. You know, everybody says they want the government to be more responsible with funding, but the moment someone tries to be, guess what? They somehow are some big old meanie, right? And that's what the left is saying about this budget, that it's just mean, it's heartless. What is it that the left can't seem to grasp here in that, you know, you cannot spend your way from here to the moon?
Trish, how many times have we been through this? You read the papers today, all the same old words are appearing. The cuts are always draconian. They're sending a dire signal to the clients. You know, these are the crown jewels. It's the same stuff over and over again. You know, sometimes they're going to cut Medicare. They accuse the Republicans of cutting Social Security. They're going to cut Medicare. They bring people in wheelchairs. They say, what are you going to do about this? Today, it's Meals on Wheels. Another one they're going after is a Corporation for Public Broadcasting. Now, Trish, you and I, we're in the media. We know this. Corporation for Public Broadcasting, it's getting out of the children's programming division. HBO has bought some of the programs. Netflix has started 35 children's programs. Amazon is doing streaming. You know, why do we need to keep funding the Corporation for Public Broadcasting? And these unions are saying, they're cutting our departments. They're undermining our, again, there's another word, undermining our critical mission. Well, as far as I can see, a lot of these federal agencies, the deep state as they're called now, their critical mission is undermining Trump's agenda. And Trump won the election, so I think he has every right to undermine their mission to undermine him.
Well, look, you know, you're right on PBS. I remember when I was a kid, I lived for PBS, right? Mr. Rogers, Sesame Street, the electric company. And my kids, I'll tell you, Chris, they don't even know what PBS is. You know why? Because of the market selections out there. Anyway, you know, PBS, you think about Hamilton, that musical that Mike Pence was booed at. That was in part endowed by the National Endowment for the Arts. Yet, Hamilton is perhaps one of the most profitable musicals out there, to the tune of making $100 million a year. So I just argue that they don't need the extra government money. I mean, you know, it seems to me you got to be
at the end of the day. I wish the president would have read his budget, because a lot of his campaign promises are being ignored by that budget. Let me give you one example. Impact Aid, which helps educate families of our military, has been cut out of the budget right now, Trish. I don't think the president understands that, because if he did, I'm sure he'd want to put that back in. It's a very small amount of money that educates the hardworking military men and women in this country. It educates their kids.
So is this heartless in your view? Is this budget absolutely heartless?
As for Meals on Wheels, Trish,
Meals on Wheels, you know, they only get 3% of their funding from the U.S. government. Can't they cut their funding by 3%?
Trish, that's a red herring argument, okay? Here in New York, it might be less than 3%. But if you go to Appalachia and other poorer parts of the country where they went very heavily for President Trump, they get a lot more than 3% of their funding from the federal government. In fact, in some places like that, they get all their funding, and they're going to lose that in this budget. I think if the president understood that, the president would think again about making this cut.
Howie?
Trish, there's another, he mentioned the phrase red herring. I mean, the Appalachia Regional Commission, that's been around for 50 years. That goes back to Lyndon Johnson days. And, you know, what has it done? It's West Virginia and 12 other states, all the way from New York down to Mississippi, Alabama. And what has it ever done other than, you know, feather the nests of some politically connected people? They all set up nonprofits. They get these grants. Has anything changed? The problems have gotten worse in these areas. This is just a waste. I mean, you've got to make cutbacks somewhere, and that's where they're going. That's where they're going after. They're going after the waste.
Thank you so much for joining me, Howie and Chris. Good to see you. Happy St. Patrick's Day.